Hi, I'm Cheryl and welcome to the Sewing Room channel. Aren't these pillows pretty? I'm going to show you how to make this pattern into any size you want. For instance, this little tiny pillow down here you can use as a pincushion, or you can just use it as a decorative piece around your house. This middle one here I made out of a cross-stitch kit that I had. And then this one here, I've used cotton batting in it, and I've done some beautiful quilting stitches. So you can make it really small or really big, really detailed or not. So let's get started. Here is a chart of how big or small to cut your squares depending on the finished size of your pillow. So if you're making a 20-inch pillow or all the way down to just a little 5-inch pillow, which I use for pin cushions, you would divide the number by 2. It doesn't matter which size you're making, divide it by 2. Then you're going to cut 4 squares for that particular pillow. And so let's say 2 into 20 is 10. But you need to add, a ½ inch to the 10. So it's 10 and a half. So if it's an 18-inch pillow, divided by 2 is 9, add a ½ inch. When you get down here to the 5-inch pillow, divide that by 2, that's 2 and a half, add a ½ inch. So you would cut 4 squares that are 3-inch. So no matter what finished size you're making, you need to divide it by 2, add a ½ inch for seam allowance because the seams size on this pillow is going to be a £1/4 inch. And then the pieces for the front and back, the larger pieces, you take that pillow size that is the finished size, add a ½ inch. So if it's that 5-inch pillow size for the pincushion, you add a ½ inch. So it is 5 1/2 inch. So you're going to cut 1 for the front and 1 for the back. And I suggest you make a little sheet like this. You can put this video on pause, take a picture with your cell phone. And I would also even maybe draw a little picture of what this pillow is supposed to be like and file that information into that little book. Remember the book I put out about your presser feed and the size of things to make different seams or different stitches? You could put little sewing instructions in that same book. So if you're interested in getting a book started, there'll be a link below your YouTube screen on how to go about setting a book up. I'm going to make the little 5-inch one, the pincushion size. So here's my piece for the front, my piece for the back. These are 5 1/2 inches, both of these pieces. You need 4 squares, 1 for each corner, that are 3 inches. On all 4 of your squares, you're going to place a ruler and line it up corner to corner, and take a pencil or a fabric marker and draw a line. And you do that on all 4 pieces. Place your background fabric for the front pretty side up, the front side of it. Take 2 of your squares and place them up in the corners and line it up on the edges here. Then you're going to stitch very close to the line, but not on top of the line. So on this square here, you're going to stitch on this side of the line. Not on top of it, but very close to it. Then on this square, you're going to stitch on this side of the line. Again, don't stitch on top of the line, but very, very close to it. Then take your piece like this and fold the bottom fabric back, and either with a rotary cutter or a pair of scissors, cut some of this square off. And you would do it on both corners. Now press your seam on the back side, then unfold and press it on top. You do that on both sides, and when you're done, it should look like this. You want to make sure this edge of your squares are as close to the background fabric edge as possible. Then take your last two squares and line them up and repeat the process. Stitch on this side of the line, and then on this one, stitch on this side of the line. And they are supposed to overlap the previous squares that were stitched on. So when you're done, this is what it should look like. Now take your fabric for the back and lay it front side down, and then line up your edges. Now, if you are having things like this that's sticking out, what you would want to do is trim it off to where it's the same size as this square here. So you could just lay it on top and then trim around it. Then go ahead and place pins on all four sides. But then you're going to leave an opening in one area. That's so that you can put your polyfill stuffing in it. So I'm going to put a pin here, and I'm going to put 2 pins because that's where I'm going to stop. So, or it's my stopping point for stitching. Then I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go about to here. So I'm going to leave this open. So I'll start here, and I'll do a little back stitch, and then stitch around all 4 sides. And when you come around to here, back stitch. Now, a tip for getting around your corners easily is, as you're stitching down here, and you're doing a 1/4 inch seam, if I haven't mentioned that already, a 1/4 inch seam. So you stop a 1/4 of an inch away from this edge, leave your needle down through your fabric, lift your presser foot, and then turn your fabric, lower the presser foot, and continue stitching. So that's how you get around all your corners. After stitching, then trim some of your corners off to where it's about 1/8 of an inch wide from the stitch line out to the edge. So I usually just cut across this way, and then I'll go off to the side just a little bit at an angle, and then I'll go this way at an angle and trim some of it off. Do that on all 4 corners. Go to the opening and then begin pushing the fabric through so that the pretty side of your fabric is now coming out on the outside. To get the corners to come out, you can take maybe a little chopstick or something like this if you have it. Go in through your opening and just poke those corners out. But be real careful you don't poke through your fabric. Just 2 more steps for this process, and that is now you want to take your polyfill stuffing, and there'll be a link below for the description of it and where you can get it. And you first want to just break it up into small pieces. Pull out a big clump and then just break it up. And you'd be surprised how much of this can fit in here. And so you begin to just, because this is a small little square we're filling in, and the opening is not that big, you're only going to be able to insert just a little bit at a time. So go ahead and push it in there, and let me get this open. I got stuck on it. Here we go. And push it in. And I like to go fill it into the corners first. So I'll fill in these 2 back corners, and then I'll begin filling forward, and then I'll fill in the 2 front corners. So go ahead and insert your polyfill stuffing. The last step is to fold the opening edges inside 1/4 inch. And I would finger press it so that you get a nice little place where you can insert your needle in order to close up that hole. So if you do not know how to do a ladder stitch, which is what I recommend to do because you can't see it, there's a link below your YouTube screen that takes you to my tutorial on how to do a ladder stitch. So that's how I recommend that you open or that you close it up. So isn't that cute? Let's take a look at some of the other pillows. This is the 12-inch pillow size. And what I did for this was I used one of my cross stitch patterns to make a cross stitch design. So let me show you the pattern that I use in case you're interested in it. It's made by a company called Dimensions, and you can get the little kit. This comes in a kit. It includes your thread and your directions and your Aida cloth, all of that, or I should say your floss, not your thread, in a little kit with an embroidery hoop. And it's $4.97. So if you want to get into cross stitch, this is a great way to do it. Now the Aida cloth that this was done on was only about a 9-inch square that's included in here. But because I wanted my pillow larger, I actually bought some other Aida cloth, and you can buy larger pieces. So, and I cut it into a 12.5-inch square. So when you're doing your cross stitch, I use little colored markers, and every time I finish something, I color it in so that it's easier to keep track of the stitches that I've done. There's also outline stitches in here. I recommend you don't do as many in the flower as they recommend. I found it very tedious because it's such a small little flower. I just did a little bit of outline stitches, so I cut about half of this out. And then after that, I just followed the instructions I gave you, and this is really pretty. And you can even make it larger if you want. So you can take any of your cross stitch kits or your embroidery work that you've done and put it into a pillow like this. Let's look at one more. This is a 16-inch pillow. So in the middle here, my front large piece is 16.5-inch square. On this one, I put cotton batting behind the fabric and did quilting stitches. You can see all those little squiggly lines. That's a serpentine stitch, and if you have a computerized sewing machine, you probably have that stitch on there. I also did the serpentine stitch on the back of the pillow, and there's cotton batting on that. So before you put your squares on, you would go ahead and do quilting stitches, then put your squares on and continue with the pillow as I instructed. Some other things you can do on a pillow like this is to make piping. That's that cording that goes around in the seams all around all four sides. And then another thing you can do is if you want to make it really feminine and frilly, you can even add a ruffle to it. So you have a lot of options with this basic pattern. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you're interested in other pillow projects, and I have lots of tutorials on pillows, make sure you go below your YouTube screen and click on those links. Now also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and check out my Facebook page. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing! I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click on the thumbs up button. Don't forget to click on share to share this video with your friends. If you haven't subscribed yet, click on that red subscribe button down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Don't forget to click on the bell. I'm Cheryl, and this is a lot of mayonnaise. See you next time, and happy sewing!